everyone, tonight our story is about a place that exists between waking and sleeping, where the boundaries of reality blur like watercolors in the rain. It's about Maya Chun, a textile artist who had lost her ability to dream, and the mysterious Atelier that would change everything she thought she knew about the world beyond consciousness. Maya had always been a vivid dreamer. As a child, she would wake each morning with her head full of impossible landscapes and fantastical creatures that she would immediately sketch in the margins of her school notebooks. Her dreams were so rich and detailed that she often preferred them to her waking life, which seemed pale and ordinary by comparison. It was these nocturnal visions that first inspired her to become a textile artist, translating the flowing fabrics and impossible patterns from her dreams into tangible tapestries and garments. But 3 years ago, the dreams had stopped. It began gradually, like a radio slowly losing its signal. The vivid colors faded first, leaving behind only muted grays and browns. Then the fantastical elements disappeared, no more flying carpets or talking animals, no more cities that grew like flowers from the earth. Finally, even the ordinary dreams vanished, leaving Maya's nights as blank and empty as fresh canvas. At first, she told herself it was stress. She had just opened her own studio in the arts district of the city, and the pressure of running a business while maintaining her artistic practice was considerable. She tried meditation, changed her diet, even consulted a sleep specialist who prescribed various remedies. Nothing worked. Her nights became 8-hour voids, periods of unconsciousness that left her feeling neither rested nor inspired. Without her dreams to guide her, Maya's art began to suffer. The flowing, organic patterns that had once come to her as naturally as breathing now felt forced and artificial. Her color palette grew increasingly subdued, her compositions more geometric and rigid. Clients began to comment on the change in her work, though they couldn't quite articulate what was different. Maya knew, though, her art had lost its soul. It was on a particularly gray Tuesday evening in November that Maya first noticed the shop. She'd been walking home from her studio, taking a different route than usual to avoid the construction on Fifth Avenue, when she found herself on a narrow cobblestone street she had never seen before. This was unusual in itself. Maya had lived in the city for 15 years and thought she knew every corner of the arts district. But here was an entire block that seemed to have materialized from nowhere, lined with Victorian-era buildings that looked far too old to exist in this part of the city. The shop sat at the corner of this impossible street, its windows glowing with warm amber light despite the early hour. Above the door, a sign read Morpheus & Co., dreamweavers and purveyors of nocturnal visions, an elegant script that seemed to shimmer and move in the lamplight. Maya paused, certain she was seeing things. Dreamweavers? It sounded like something from a fairy tale. She approached the window and peered inside. The shop was unlike anything she had ever seen. Bolts of fabric hung from every surface, but these weren't ordinary textiles. They seemed to move of their own accord, rippling like water, shifting colors like the aurora borealis. Some appeared to be woven from starlight itself, while others looked as if they were made from crystallized music or bottled moonbeams. Mannequins displayed garments that defied the laws of physics, dresses that seemed to be cut from the surface of a calm lake, suits that appeared to be tailored from the texture of clouds. A figure moved in the shadows at the back of the shop, and Maya instinctively stepped back from the window. But her curiosity was stronger than her caution, and she found herself pushing open the door, setting off a collection of wind chimes that sounded like distant laughter. The scent that greeted her was indescribable, part lavender, part ocean spray, part something that reminded her of childhood summers and half-remembered lullabies. The interior of the shop was even more remarkable than what she had glimpsed through the window. Fabrics cascaded from the ceiling like waterfalls, and the very air seemed to shimmer with possibility. "Welcome, Maya," said a voice from the shadows. "I've been expecting you." Maya spun around, her heart racing. A woman emerged from between the hanging fabrics, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. The woman was ageless in the way of statues or ancient trees. She could have been 30. Or 300? Her hair was silver white and seemed to move with its own breeze, and her eyes held the depth of storm clouds. She wore a dress that appeared to be woven from the concept of twilight itself, shifting between deep purple and indigo with threads of silver that caught the light like captured stars. "How do you know my name?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled, and Maya noticed that her teeth were perfectly white and slightly too sharp. "I am Celeste, and I know many things. I know that you haven't dreamed in 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days. I know that your art has lost its fire, and that you've been searching for something you can't quite name. I know that you found my shop tonight, not by accident, but by necessity." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "That's impossible." "How could you know? Nothing is impossible here," Celeste interrupted gently. "This is the Atelier of the Dream Weaver, a place where the impossible becomes inevitable. We create dreams, Maya. We weave them from the gossamer threads of possibility and the sturdy warp of human longing. And you, my dear, are in desperate need of our services." Maya looked around the shop with new eyes. Now that she knew what she was looking at, she could see the true nature of the fabrics surrounding her. They weren't just textiles, they were dreams made manifest, woven into forms that could be touched and worn and experienced. Her artist's eye could discern the subtle differences between a nightmare tapestry, dark and angular, with threads that seemed to writhe, and a peaceful slumber shawl, soft and flowing, with a pattern that seemed to breathe with its own rhythm. "This is impossible," Maya repeated, but her voice lacked conviction. In her heart, she knew that she was seeing something real, something that existed beyond the boundaries of what she had always assumed to be possible. Celeste moved through the shop with fluid grace, her fingers trailing along various fabrics. As she spoke, "The Dream Weaver has been creating nocturnal visions for millennia. Every culture has known of us, though we've been called by different names. The Greeks knew us as the servants of Morpheus, the Romans as the Salmia textors. In your modern world, we operate more discreetly, but our work continues. We take the raw material of human experience, hopes, fears, memories, desires, and weave them into the dreams that visit you each night." Maya found herself drawn to a particular bolt of fabric that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. It was the color of sunset over water, with threads of gold and crimson that moved in patterns that reminded her of her childhood dreams. "You're saying that dreams are manufactured?" "Not manufactured," Celeste corrected. "Crafted, woven. Dreams are far too complex and personal to be mass-produced. Each one is a unique creation tailored to the specific needs of the dreamer. We read the threads of your life, your joys, your sorrows, your deepest longings, and we weave them into visions that will nurture your soul while you sleep." Maya reached out to touch the sunset fabric, and the moment her fingers made contact, she felt a shock of recognition. In her mind's eye, she saw herself as a child, lying in a hammock in her grandmother's garden, watching the clouds shift and change into fantastical shapes. She saw the old woman's weathered hands as she taught, Maya to embroider, the needle moving with practiced precision as she explained how every stitch told a story. That's a memory dream, Celeste explained softly, made from the threads of nostalgia and love. It would take you back to moments of perfect peace, allowing you to revisit the experiences that shaped you. But I sense that's not what you need. Most. She led Maya deeper into the shop, past displays of dream catchers that actually caught dreams. Maya could see the ethereal wisps floating within their webs and mirrors that reflected not your face, but your sleeping self. They stopped before a loom that dominated the center of the shop, its frame carved from wood that seemed to grow and shift as Maya watched. "This is where the real work happens," Celeste said, running her hand along the frame. "The dream weavers. Loom crafted from the tree of sleep that grows at the crossroads between waking and dreaming. It's here that we weave the dreams that will transform lives." Maya stared at the loom, mesmerized. The shuttle moved of its own accord, weaving threads of light and shadow into patterns that seemed to tell stories. She could see fragments of dreams taking shape: a woman flying over a city of crystal, a man swimming through an ocean of stars, a child playing in a garden where the flowers sang lullabies. "Who is the dream weaver?" Maya asked. Celeste smiled mysteriously. "That depends on who you ask. Some say it's a single entity older than time itself. Others believe it's a title passed down through generations of dream crafters. The truth is more complex than either explanation. The dream weaver is both one and many, mortal and eternal, creator and creation." She gestured to the loom where the shuttle continued its hypnotic dance. "What I can tell you is that the current dream weaver is in need of an apprentice. Someone with the skill to understand the delicate art of dream weaving and the sensitivity to craft visions that will truly serve the dreamer. Someone who has walked in the wasteland of dreamless sleep and understands the profound importance of what we do here." Maya felt her heart begin to race. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a calling," Celeste corrected. "But the choice is yours. You can leave here tonight, return to your studio, and continue creating beautiful but lifeless art. Or you can stay and learn to weave dreams that will not only restore your own ability to dream, but will touch the lives of countless others who have lost their way in the realm of sleep." Maya looked around the shop once more, taking in the impossible beauty of it all. Part of her wanted to dismiss this as an elaborate hallucination, a product of too much stress and too little sleep. But her artist's instincts told her otherwise. The textures were too real, the colors too vivid, the sense of possibility too overwhelming to be anything but genuine. "If I stay," she said slowly, "what would I have to do?" Celeste moved to a cabinet filled with spools of thread that seemed to contain entire universes. "First, you would need to learn to see dreams as they truly are, not random firings of neurons, but carefully constructed narratives designed to heal, inspire, and transform. You would study the different types of dreams, the prophetic dreams that prepare us for the future, the healing dreams that mend our broken hearts, the creative dreams that spark innovation and art." She pulled out a spool of thread that looked like liquid starlight. "Then you would learn to read the dream threads of human experience. Every person carries within them the raw materials of their dreams, their fears, their hopes, their unresolved conflicts, their deepest desires. A skilled dream weaver can read these threads and understand exactly what kind of dream will serve that person best." Maya watched as Celeste began to weave the starlight thread into a small sample on a hand loom. The pattern that emerged was breathtaking, a spiral that seemed to contain infinite depth, with colors that shifted and changed as Maya watched. Finally, Celeste continued, you would learn to weave the dreams themselves, to take the raw threads of human experience and create visions that will guide, comfort, and inspire. It's not easy work. Each dream must be perfectly calibrated to the dreamer's needs. Too intense, and you risk creating nightmares. Too gentle, and the dream won't have the power to create real change. She handed Maya the sample she had woven, and Maya gasped as she felt the texture. It was like touching a piece of the night sky, cool and electric and alive with possibility. This is incredible, she whispered. This is just the beginning, Celeste said. But I must warn you, once you begin this path, there's no going back. You'll see the world differently, understand the hidden connections between all living things. You'll carry the responsibility of crafting dreams that can heal or harm, inspire or terrify. It's not a burden to be taken lightly. Maya held the sample up to the light, watching as the colors shifted and danced. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something stirring within her, not just artistic inspiration, but a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. This was bigger than her own lost dreams, bigger than her struggling art career. This was about touching the very essence of human experience, helping to shape the visions that would guide people through their darkest nights. I want to learn, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was committing to. Celeste smiled, and Maya noticed that her eyes had grown brighter, as if lit from within. Then welcome Maya-chan to the Dreamweaver's Atelier. Your training begins tonight. As if summoned by her words, the shop around them began to transform. The walls stretched upward, revealing a second story that hadn't been there before. Staircases spiraled impossibly through the air, leading to rooms filled with looms and spinning wheels, libraries of dream journals, and galleries where finished dreams hung like tapestries, waiting to be delivered to their intended recipients. Maya felt a mix of excitement and terror as she realized that she was no longer in the world she knew. She had crossed a threshold into something ancient and powerful, a realm where the boundaries between reality and imagination were as permeable as morning mist. There would be no going back to her old life, to her dreamless nights and uninspired art. She was about to embark on the most extraordinary journey of her life. Come, Celeste said, leading her toward one of the spiral staircases. Let me show you your workshop. As they climbed, Maya caught glimpses of other dream weavers at work, an elderly man spinning threads from children's laughter, a young woman weaving a tapestry from the colors of autumn leaves, a person whose gender seemed to shift like smoke, crafting what looked like a dream of flying on wings made of pure music. Each was completely absorbed in their work, their faces illuminated by the glow of their creations. How many of you are there? Maya asked. Enough, Celeste replied. The world is full of dreamers, Maya, and each one deserves visions that will nurture their souls. We work in shifts, weaving dreams for every time zone, every culture, every age. The work never stops because the need for dreams never ends. They reached a landing where a door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling out into the hallway. Celeste pushed it open, revealing a workspace that took Maya's breath away. The room was circular, with windows that looked out onto impossible views, a forest of silver trees under a star-filled sky, an ocean that reflected not the moon but entire galaxies, mountains that seemed to be made of crystallized music. In the center of the room stood a loom unlike any Maya had ever seen. It was crafted from what looked like solidified moonbeams, with strings that hummed with their own harmony. Baskets of threads surrounded it, each one containing a different aspect of human experience: hope, fear, love, loss, wonder, wisdom. "This is where you'll learn," Celeste said softly. "This is where you'll discover what it truly means to be a dream weaver." Maya approached the loom with reverence, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch the frame. The moment her fingers made contact, she felt a jolt of connection, not just to the loom, but to something vast and ancient that seemed to encompass all of human experience. She could feel the dreams of countless sleepers, their hopes and fears, and deepest longings flowing like rivers of light through the darkness of night. "I can feel them," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I can feel everyone who's dreaming right now." Celeste nodded, understanding in her storm cloud eyes. "That's the first sign of a true dream weaver. You're beginning to perceive the great web, the invisible network that connects all dreamers. Every thread you weave becomes part of that web, touching lives in ways you may never fully comprehend." Maya wiped her eyes, trying to process the overwhelming sensation of connection. "When do we begin?" "Now," Celeste said, moving to one of the baskets and pulling out a single thread that glowed with soft golden light. "This is the thread of lost dreams, dreams that have been forgotten, abandoned, or never allowed to flourish. It's the perfect material for your first lesson." She guided Maya to the loom and showed her how to position the thread. "Tonight you'll weave a dream for someone who has lost their ability to hope. Someone who has forgotten that there's magic in the world, beauty in the darkness, and possibilities beyond their current circumstances." Maya's hands moved instinctively to the loom, and she felt the thread respond to her touch. It was warm and alive, pulsing with potential. "Who will receive this dream?" "You'll know when you see them," Celeste said. "The threads will guide you to the right person. Trust in the process, Maya. Trust in the ancient wisdom of the dreamweaver's art." As Maya began to weave, she felt something awakening within her that had been dormant for 3 long years. It was more than just artistic inspiration. It was a sense of connection to something larger than herself, a purpose that transcended her individual desires and fears. She was no longer just Maya Chun's struggling textile artist. She was becoming something new, something powerful and necessary. The thread moved through her fingers like liquid light, and with each pass of the shuttle, she felt the dream taking shape. She couldn't see it yet, that would come with practice, but she could feel its essence. It was a dream of possibility, of wonder, of the magic that still existed in the world for those who knew how to look for it. Outside the impossible windows, the night deepened, and somewhere in the city below, dreamers settled into sleep, unknowingly waiting for the visions that would guide them through the darkness and into the light of a new day. And in the Dreamweaver's Atelier, Maya Chen began her transformation from artist to something far more powerful: a weaver of dreams, a guardian of the night, a keeper of the sacred boundary between waking and sleeping. The first part of her journey was just beginning. Maya's first night in the Dreamweaver's Atelier passed in a blur of wonder and exhaustion. She had worked at the moonbeam loom until dawn, her fingers learning the rhythm of the threads, her mind slowly beginning to comprehend the vast complexity of dream weaving. The dream she had crafted, a vision of hope for someone who had forgotten how to believe in magic, had been simple but complete. And when she finally stepped back from the loom, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Celeste had appeared. As the first light of dawn touched the impossible windows, carrying a cup of tea that smelled of chamomile and starlight. "Well done," she had said, examining Maya's work with approval. For a first attempt, this shows remarkable intuition. The recipient will sleep peacefully tonight and perhaps wake with a spark of wonder they thought they had lost forever. Now, as Maya sat in her new quarters, a cozy room above the workshop with a bed that seemed to be made from condensed clouds, she tried to process everything that had happened. She had crossed over into a world that existed parallel to the one she knew, a realm where the impossible was everyday reality. The transition felt both jarring and natural, as if she'd always been meant to find this place. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, and was surprised to see a young man enter, carrying a tray of food that made her stomach rumble with sudden hunger. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she had eaten. "I'm Orion," he said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "I'm one of the senior apprentices here. Celeste asked me to bring you breakfast and to begin your formal education." Mia studied him as she approached the food. Orion appeared to be in his early 20s, with dark hair that seemed to hold flecks of actual starlight and eyes that shifted color like the surface of a deep lake. He wore clothes that looked like they had been woven from the texture of twilight, and when he moved, she caught glimpses of patterns that seemed to flow across the fabric like living things. "How long have you been here?" Maya asked, sampling what appeared to be toast made from crystallized honey and butter that tasted like summer mornings. "Time works differently in the Atelier," Orion replied, settling into a chair across from her. "I've been here for what feels like several years, but in the outside world, only a few months have passed. The boundary between our realm and yours is flexible. It allows us to do our work without being constrained by linear time." Maya paused, a forkful of eggs that seemed to be made from liquid sunshine halfway to her mouth. "Are you saying I could spend years here and only be gone for a few days from my old life?" "Something like that," Orion nodded. "Though most apprentices find that once they begin this work, they have little desire to return to their previous existence. The art of dream weaving becomes all-consuming in the best possible way." As Maya ate, Orion began to explain the structure of the atelier. There were 7 levels, each dedicated to a different aspect of dream work. The ground floor, where she had first entered, was the reception area and basic workshop. The second floor housed the apprentice quarters and training rooms. The third floor was where the journeyman worked, crafting more complex dreams for specific clients. The fourth floor was reserved for the master weavers who created the great prophetic dreams and visions that shape the course of human history. "What about the upper floors?" Maya asked, intrigued by the hierarchy. Orion's expression grew more serious. "The 5th floor is where the nightmare weavers work. They're a necessary part of our craft. Sometimes people need to confront their fears in order to overcome them. The 6th floor is the archive, where every dream ever woven is stored and cataloged. And the 7th floor." He paused, looking almost reverent. "That's where the dream weaver works. The original. The one who taught us all." Maya felt a chill of anticipation. "Will I meet them?" "Perhaps," Orion said. "When you're ready. The Dreamweaver doesn't reveal themselves to everyone, and never to those who aren't prepared for the encounter. But I sense you might be different. Celeste spoke of you with unusual interest." After breakfast, Orion led Maya down to the 3rd floor to a vast library that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. The shelves were filled not with books, but with crystalline orbs that glowed with soft internal light. Each orb, Orion explained, contained a dream, not just the final woven vision, but the entire process of its creation, the threads used, the technique employed, the effect it had on the dreamer. This is where you'll learn the theory behind dream weaving, Orion said, pulling an orb from a nearby shelf. Every type of dream has its own characteristics, its own requirements. Healing dreams need threads of compassion and forgiveness. Prophetic dreams require strands of possibility and intuition. Creative dreams are woven from inspiration and wonder. He handed Maya the orb, and the moment she touched it, her mind was flooded with images. She saw a woman in a hospital bed, her face drawn with pain, and then the dream that had been woven for her, a vision of walking through a garden where every flower sang a healing song. Maya felt the woman's pain ease, saw her sleep become peaceful and restorative. The weaver, who created this dream, used threads of empathy and hope, Orion explained as Maya set the orb down with trembling hands. They had to understand the exact nature of the woman's suffering in order to craft a dream that would provide comfort without being overwhelming. Maya spent the morning studying different types of dreams, learning to recognize the subtle differences. Between them, there were anxiety dreams, which were actually positive, carefully constructed visions that allowed the dreamer to work through their fears in a safe environment. There were memory dreams, which helped people process traumatic experiences by revisiting them in a context of love and understanding. There were guidance dreams, which provided direction to those who were lost, and celebration dreams, which reminded people of their achievements and worth. As the day progressed, Maya began to understand the profound responsibility that came with dream weaving. These weren't just random visions, they were carefully crafted experiences that could shape the course of a person's life. A poorly woven dream could traumatize someone, while a skillfully crafted one could provide healing, inspiration, or the courage to face difficult challenges. The most important thing to remember, Orion said as they concluded the morning's lesson, is that we are servants, not masters. We don't impose our own agenda on the dreams we weave. We listen to what the dreamer needs, and we provide it with as much skill and compassion as we can muster. The afternoon brought practical training. Maya was assigned to work with a master weaver named Sage, an elderly woman whose hair was white as moonlight and whose eyes held the wisdom of centuries. Sage's workshop was on the 4th floor, and Maya gasped when she saw the loom that dominated the space. It was enormous, made from what looked like crystallized time itself with threads that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Today you'll observe, Sage said, her voice carrying the rhythm of ocean waves. Watching a master at work is worth more than a dozen theory lessons. Maya settled into a comfortable chair as Sage began to work. The master weaver's hands moved, with impossible grace, selecting threads from baskets that seemed to contain the essence of human experience. Maya watched in fascination as Sage began to weave a dream for a young man who had lost his father in a car accident. The dream was complex, layered with multiple meanings and emotional resonances. He's been consumed by guilt, Sage explained as she worked, thinking that if he had called his father that morning, if he asked him to delay his trip by just a few minutes, the accident wouldn't have happened. The dream I'm weaving will help him understand that some things are beyond our control, that love doesn't diminish with death, and that his father would want him to live fully, not drown in regret. Maya watched as Sage wove threads of memory and forgiveness, love and acceptance. The dream that emerged was beautiful, a vision of the young man walking with his father through a place that existed beyond time, where they could speak the words that had been left unsaid, where healing could begin. The art is in the subtlety, Sage continued. If the message is too obvious, the conscious mind will reject it. If it's too obscure, it won't have the desired effect. We must find the perfect balance, speaking to the dreamer's subconscious in a language it can understand and accept. As the day wore on, Maya observed several more master weavers at work. Each had their own style, their own specialty. One focused on dreams for children, weaving visions of wonder and safety that would help young minds develop resilience and creativity. Another specialized in dreams for the elderly, crafting peaceful visions that would ease the transition between life and death. A third worked exclusively with artists and writers, weaving dreams that would unlock their creative potential. The variety is endless, Sage explained during a break. Every human being is unique, and their dreams must be crafted to match their individual needs. That's why we spend so much time in training. By the time you become a master weaver, you'll have studied thousands of different types of dreams, learned to read the subtle signs that tell you what each person needs. As evening approached, Maya found herself back in her own workshop, staring at the moonbeam loom. Celeste had assigned her a new project, a dream for a woman who had been struggling with depression, someone who had lost sight of her own worth and potential. It was a delicate task, requiring threads of self-compassion and hope, woven together in a pattern that would remind the woman of her own strength. Maya approached the loom with reverence, her hands trembling slightly as she selected the first thread. It was golden, warm to the touch, and seemed to pulse with gentle energy. As she began to weave, she felt herself entering a meditative state, her consciousness expanding to encompass the needs of the dreamer. She saw the woman middle-aged, sitting alone in a small apartment, surrounded by the detritus of a life that felt meaningless. Maya felt the woman's pain, her sense of isolation and despair, and she wove that understanding into the dream. But she also saw deeper the woman's hidden kindness, her creative spirit that had been buried under years of disappointment, her capacity for love that had been dimmed but not extinguished. The dream Maya wove was simple but profound. The woman would find herself in a garden where every plant was something she had nurtured, every act of kindness, every moment of joy she had brought to others, every time she had chosen love over fear. She would see herself as the gardener, tending to beauty and growth, and she would remember that her life had meaning, that she was necessary and valuable. As Maya worked, she became aware of other presences in the workshop. Not visible presences, but the essence of other dreamers whose visions were being woven throughout the atelier. She could feel their hopes and fears, their longing for connection and understanding. It was overwhelming at first, but gradually she learned to focus on her own work while remaining aware of the larger tapestry of human experience. When she finally stepped back from the loom, the dream was complete. It glowed with gentle light, and Maya could feel its healing potential. Somewhere in the city below, a woman would sleep peacefully tonight and perhaps wake with a renewed sense of her own worth. Beautiful work, came a voice from the doorway. Maya turned to see Celeste, but the master weaver looked different, somehow more substantial, more present. You're learning quickly. Your instincts are remarkable. Maya felt a flush of pride, but also a weight of responsibility. I can feel how much they need this, she said softly. The dreamers, their pain, their hope. It's overwhelming. Celeste nodded, moving to stand beside Maya at the loom. That's the burden and the gift of being a dream weaver. We feel what others feel, carry their pain in our hearts, and transform it into something beautiful. It's not easy work, but it's necessary work. She gestured to the window, where the lights of the city twinkled like earthbound stars. Out there, millions of people are preparing for sleep, and each one carries within them the seeds of dreams. Some will dream naturally, their subconscious minds weaving their own visions. But others, those who are lost, hurting, or simply in need of guidance, will receive dreams crafted with intention and love. Maya looked out at the city with new eyes. Each light represented a life, a story, a person who might benefit from the work done in the atelier. The scope of it was staggering, but also inspiring. She was part of something larger than herself, something that touched the very essence of human experience. Tomorrow, Celeste said, you'll begin working with the journeyman. You'll learn to craft more complex dreams, visions that can unfold over multiple nights, dreams that can change the course of a person's life. But for now, rest. Dream weaving is exhausting work, and you'll need all your strength for what lies ahead. As Celeste left, Maya prepared for bed, her mind still buzzing with everything she had learned. She'd expected to have trouble sleeping. The transition from her old life to this new reality was enormous, but the moment her head touched the pillow, she felt herself drifting into a peaceful slumber. And for the first time in 3 years, Maya dreamed. She found herself in a vast garden where every flower was woven from light and music, where the air itself seemed to sparkle with possibility. She walked among the flower beds, each one representing a different aspect of the dream-weaving craft she was learning. There were roses made of healing threads, sunflowers that glowed with hope, and delicate orchids that seemed to contain entire symphonies. At the center of the garden stood a figure whose face she couldn't quite see, but whose presence filled her with a sense of profound peace and purpose. The figure didn't speak, but Maya understood that this was a gift, a dream woven especially for her, to welcome her into her new life and to remind her of the beauty and importance of the work she was undertaking. When she woke the next morning, Maya was smiling. The dream had been more vivid and meaningful than any she had experienced before losing her ability to dream. She knew without being told that it had been crafted by the dream weaver themselves, a master's welcome to their newest apprentice. As she dressed and prepared for another day of training, Maya felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had found her calling, her purpose, her place in the world. The work would be challenging, demanding, and sometimes heartbreaking, but it was work. That mattered. Every dream she wove would touch a life. Every vision she crafted would have the potential to heal, inspire, or transform. The sun was rising over the impossible city visible through her window, and Maya knew that today would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to serve the dreamers of the world. She was no longer just Maya-chan, struggling artist. She was Maya-chan, apprentice dreamweaver, guardian of the night, and keeper of the sacred art that connected all human hearts through the mystery of sleep. The second part of her journey was about to begin. 3 weeks passed in the Dreamweaver's atelier, though Maya had learned not to trust her perception of time in this place between worlds. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and a deeper understanding of the profound art she was learning. Her skills had progressed rapidly, perhaps too rapidly. According to some of the other apprentices who had been training for months without achieving her level of intuitive understanding. It's like she was born to this, Maya overheard one of them saying to another as they worked in the second-floor practice room. Celeste has never taken such a personal interest in an apprentice before. Maya tried not to let the whispered conversations affect her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about her situation. Celeste had begun giving her increasingly complex assignments, and yesterday she'd been invited to observe a master weaver working on a prophetic, dream something that typically wasn't shown to apprentices until they had been training for at least a year. It was during her 4th week at the Atelier that Maya first encountered the nightmare weavers. She'd been working late in her workshop, crafting a healing dream for a war veteran, when she heard unusual sounds coming from the floor above. Not the gentle humming of normal dream weaving, but something darker, more discordant, like music played in a minor key, with threads that seemed to whisper rather than sing. Curiosity overcoming caution, Maya climbed the spiral staircase to the 5th floor. The corridor was dimmer here, lit by torches that burned with purple flames, and the air felt heavier, charged with a different kind of energy. She approached the nearest workshop and peered through the partially open door. Inside, a figure worked at a loom that seemed to be made from crystallized shadow. The weaver was draped in cloth that absorbed light rather than reflecting it, and the threads they worked with were darker than midnight, shot through with veins of deep red and silver. Maya watched in fascination as the weaver crafted what was clearly a nightmare, but not a random, chaotic vision of terror. This was a carefully constructed experience, designed to help the dreamer confront and overcome a specific fear. "Beautiful work, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Maya spun around to find a woman standing in the corridor, tall and elegant, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of understanding. Unlike the other weavers Maya had met, this woman wore no robes or flowing fabrics. Instead, she was dressed in a simple black suit that seemed to be tailored from the substance of deep space itself. "I'm sorry," Maya stammered. "I didn't mean to spy. I was just curious about the dark work," the woman said with a slight smile. "I'm Nyx, the supervisor of the Nightmare Weavers. And you must be Maya, the apprentice everyone is talking about." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I hope I'm not causing any trouble. I know some of the other apprentices think I'm progressing too quickly." Nyx studied her with those deep, knowing eyes. "Progress is not something to be ashamed of, child, especially when it's driven by genuine calling rather than mere ambition. Tell me, what do you see when you look at this work?" Maya turned back to watch the Nightmare Weaver. The dream taking shape on the loom was intense, a vision of someone being chased through a dark forest by shapeless creatures. But as Maya watched more closely, she began to understand the subtleties of the construction. The dreamer was being chased, yes, but the path through the forest was deliberately laid out to lead them toward a clearing where they would find the tools they needed to face their pursuers. "It's not just a nightmare," Maya said slowly. "It's a training ground." The dreamer is being given the opportunity to practice courage, to learn that they're stronger than they think. Nyx nodded approvingly. "Exactly. This nightmare is being woven for a young woman who's been paralyzed by social anxiety. Every interaction terrifies her. Every conversation feels like a threat. But in the safety of dreams, she can practice. Facing her fears, can learn that the monsters in her mind are not as powerful as she believes." She gestured for Maya to follow her down the corridor. "Many people misunderstand the role of nightmare weavers. They think we're cruel, that we enjoy causing fear and distress. But the truth is quite the opposite. We work with the most delicate material of all human terror, and we transform it into something useful, something healing." They stopped at another workshop where a different weaver was crafting a dream that made Maya's skin crawl. The vision being woven showed someone trapped in a collapsing building, walls closing in from all sides. But again, Maya could see the Careful construction, the way the dream was designed to teach the dreamer about their own resilience and resourcefulness. The recipient of this dream, Nix explained, is a businessman who has been avoiding making important decisions because he's terrified of failure. This nightmare will put him in a situation where inaction means certain doom, where he must act. Despite his fear, when he wakes, he'll have a visceral understanding of the cost of paralysis. Maya watched the weaver work, noting the precision required to balance terror with purpose, fear with hope. It was perhaps the most challenging aspect of dream weaving she had yet encountered. Would you like to try? Nix asked, and Maya felt a chill run down her spine. I don't know if I'm ready, Maya admitted. The responsibility seems enormous. What if I traumatize someone instead of helping them? Nix's expression grew serious. That's exactly why you might be ready. The weavers who worry about the harm they might cause are the ones least likely to cause it. It's the overconfident ones who create true nightmares instead of therapeutic ones. She led Maya to a smaller workshop at the end of the corridor. I have a client who needs a very specific type of dream. A woman who has been in an abusive relationship and has finally found the courage to leave, but she's terrified of being alone. She needs a nightmare that will show her that independence, while sometimes frightening, is far preferable to the prison of her past. Maya felt her heart racing as she approached the loom. This was unlike anything she had attempted before. The threads available to her were darker, more volatile than those she was used to working with. There were strands of fear, yes, but also threads of strength, determination, and hard-won wisdom. The key, Nix said softly, is to remember that you're not creating fear for its own sake. You're creating experience that will teach, heal, and empower. The nightmare serves the dreamer, not the other way around. Maya began to weave, her hands trembling at first but gradually growing steady as she felt the rhythm of the work. The dream that emerged was challenging. The woman found herself alone in a vast house, with shadows moving in the corners and strange sounds echoing through the halls. But Maya wove into the dream a growing sense of the woman's own power, her ability to create light in the darkness, to make the empty house into a home filled with her own choices and desires. As the dream neared completion, Maya felt a presence beside her. She looked up to see Celeste standing in the doorway, but the master weaver's expression was unreadable. Impressive work, Celeste said finally. But I'm surprised to find you here, Maya. Nightmare weaving is typically not introduced until the second year of training. Nick stepped forward. The fault is mine. I invited her to observe and then asked her to try a simple exercise. Her instincts are remarkable. She understood immediately that our work is about healing, not harming. Celeste approached the loom and studied Maya's work. The construction is sophisticated, she admitted. The balance between fear and empowerment is well calibrated. But I'm concerned about the pace of your advancement, Maya. There are protocols, established training sequences that exist for good reason. Maya felt a flush of embarrassment. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I was just curious, and when Nix offered to let me try, you have nothing to apologize for, Celeste interrupted. Your curiosity and eagerness to learn are commendable, but I think it's time we had a conversation about your future here. She turned to Nix. Thank you for the impromptu lesson. I'm sure Maya learned a great deal. As they left the 5th floor, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Celeste's tone had been neutral, but there was something in her manner that suggested this conversation would be significant. They'd climbed the spiral staircase past the 6th floor of the archive, which Maya had glimpsed but never entered, and continued to the 7th floor. Maya had never been this high in the Atelier before, and she gasped as they emerged into a circular chamber that seemed to exist at the intersection of all possible worlds. The room was vast, its walls lined with windows that looked out onto every conceivable landscape: forests of silver trees, oceans of liquid starlight, cities that floated in clouds of rainbow mist. At the center of the chamber stood the most magnificent loom Maya had ever seen, crafted from what appeared to be crystallized time itself, its threads spanning the entire spectrum of human experience. And at the loom stood a figure that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. The dream weaver was neither young nor old, neither male nor female, but something that seemed to encompass all possibilities. Their form shifted subtly as Maya watched, sometimes appearing as a wise grandmother with silver hair, sometimes as a young man with eyes full of starlight, sometimes as something that transcended human appearance entirely. They wore robes that seemed to be woven from the fabric of dreams themselves, patterns that told stories of every sleep that had ever been. "Welcome, Maya," the Dreamweaver said, their voice containing harmonics that resonated in her bones. "I've been waiting to meet you." Maya felt overwhelmed by the presence before her. This was the source of all the dreams she had learned to weave, the master of masters, the keeper of the sacred art that connected all human hearts through the mystery of sleep. "I understand you've been progressing rapidly in your training," the Dreamweaver continued, their hands never pausing in their work at the great loom. "Celeste tells me you have an unusual intuition for the craft." "I don't understand it myself," Maya admitted. "It's like I've always known how to do this. Like the knowledge was sleeping inside me, waiting to be awakened." The Dreamweaver smiled, and Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. "That's because it was, my dear. You see, not everyone can become a Dreamweaver. The ability is rare, and it usually manifests in those who have experienced a profound disruption in their own relationship with dreams." They gestured to the threads on their loom, which seemed to contain entire universes. "When you lost your ability to dream 3 years ago, it wasn't a random occurrence. It was a calling. Your subconscious was preparing you for this work, clearing away the ordinary dreams to make room for something far more significant." Maya felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "You mean I was meant to find the Atelier?" "You were meant to become more than just a Dreamweaver," the Dreamweaver replied. "You were meant to become my successor." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her mind reeling with the implications. "Your successor? But I've only been training for a few weeks. I barely understand the basics of the craft." "Understanding will come with time," the Dreamweaver said gently. "What matters is that you have the heart for this work, the sensitivity to feel what others feel, the wisdom to know what they need. These qualities cannot be taught, they must be born within the weaver." They moved away from the loom, and Maya saw that the dream they had been working on was vast and complex, containing layers upon layers of meaning and symbolism. It was a prophetic dream, she realized, one that would shape the course of human history. "I am ancient," the Dreamweaver continued. "I have served in this role for countless millennia, weaving dreams for every generation of humanity. But the time has come for me to pass the responsibility to another. The world is changing, and it needs a Dreamweaver who understands the modern heart, who can craft visions that speak to contemporary souls." Maya felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. "What would happen to you? If I became the Dreamweaver, what would become of you?" The figure smiled, and for a moment they appeared as a young woman with Maya's own eyes. I would finally be free to dream my own dreams, to rest after eons of service. But that choice is yours to make, Maya. You can continue as an apprentice, become a master weaver, and live a life of meaningful service. Or you can accept the greater calling and become the guardian of all human dreams. Maya looked around the chamber at the windows that showed every possible world, at the great loom that held the power to shape the sleeping thoughts of millions. The responsibility was staggering, but so was the opportunity. She could touch every human heart, could weave dreams that would heal the world's pain, inspire its artists, comfort its grieving, and guide its lost souls toward hope. I need time to think, Maya said finally. Of course, the dream weaver replied. Take all the time you need. But know that the offer will remain open for as long as you remain in the atelier. And Maya? They paused, their form shifting to that of a wise elder whose eyes held the depth of ages. Trust your heart. It has already led you this far. As Maya descended the spiral staircase, her mind buzzed with questions and possibilities. She had come to the atelier seeking to restore her own dreams, but she had found something far greater, a calling that could give meaning to her entire existence. The choice before her was enormous, but as she reached her own workshop and looked at this simple loom where she had learned to weave her first dreams, she felt a deep sense of peace. She'd found her place in the world, her purpose, her calling. Whether she remained an apprentice or became the dream weaver themselves, she would spend her life in service to the dreamers of the world, crafting visions that would light the way through the darkness of night and into the promise of each new day. Outside her window, the city below was settling into sleep, and Maya felt the familiar stirring of connection to all the dreamers preparing for rest. Each one carried within them the potential for healing, for growth, for transformation. And she would be there in the space between waking and sleeping, weaving the dreams that would guide them toward their best selves. The Dreamweaver's atelier hummed with quiet activity around her, and Maya Shun, once a struggling artist who had lost her dreams, smiled as she prepared for another night of creating visions that would touch the hearts of strangers and remind them that even in the darkest moments, beauty and hope were always possible. The greatest part of her journey was just beginning. The end. Sleep well, dreamers. May your nights be filled with visions of wonder, and may you wake each morning with your hearts full of possibility.